Okay, the rest of 5.5 is validate and control the scope. And here we're trying to prove that the decomposition is necessary and sufficient for all the stakeholders, and we need all of the stakeholders to sign off on that decomposition. And for God forbid, if the project is terminated early, then this is going to prove the level of completion of the project itself. Validate scope is concerned with the acceptance of the work and not the correctness. The correctness is the business of quality control, not for us. What we care about here is that somebody has signed off on the work and then we're happy. Typically, the acceptance and the correctness is done in parallel at the end of major gate. If we take a look at our validate scope here, basically we've got our plan coming in, the requirements traceability matrix, verified deliverables and work performance data. Now we're going to use inspection, and again we'll expand on this when we get around to talking about quality. And finally we're going to deliver accepted deliverables, and this is huge, possibly change requests, performance work data, and document update. So inspections basically are, we want to measure the progress of the project so far. We want to examine what we've done and make sure we do appropriate testing, that we've done the thing right. We can have other reviews for inspections, such as reviews or walkthroughs or audits or product reviews, anything where we actually check to make sure we're doing it. The output for scope verification, three things: sign off, and sign off. This is incredibly important because that's the only way we know a piece of the work has been taken off the back of the project manager and given to the person that signed off. Sometimes we have conditional sign-off. This is not a good thing. Avoid that like the plague if you possibly can. And of course, the sign-off has to be documented. We have to have a signature on that it's been accepted by the sign-offer, etc. The final component in project requirements and scope management is to control the scope. And this is concerned with controlling the factors that cause scope changes and assure that changes are agreed to. Now, generally speaking, we don't like to change scope, but there comes a time, maybe we're running behind on schedule and budget and over on budget, where we have to do that to de-scope a bit to get back on track. If that's the case, we want to make sure that all the stakeholders agree to the changes. We want to determine that a scope change has occurred and manage the changes when they actually happen. Now, changing the scope, ooh, that's big, because everything has to be integrated with all the other control processes, particularly the project management plan, the schedule plan, the cost baseline, the quality baseline, the risk baseline. It's going to affect all of the other plans of the project, so it's going to be major. So what we do here then, the input to control scope, project management plan, the requirements, the specification document, traceability matrix, verified deliverables, etc. Then we do a variance analysis to say, do we have to get back on track again? If we do, we're going to have change requests coming out at the right-hand end, updates to the project management plan and the other project documents, and also the organizational process assets are going to have to be updated too, because now if we've made a change in scope, we want to do a root cause analysis saying, why did we have to change that scope? What was the reason, the motivation for it, and what was the effect on the project in the changing of the scope? Now, why do you ask? Why did we do this? Is this not just another example of ICC, Integrated Change Control? Yes, it is. But it is so critical that we explicitly expose the process just to make sure that we do it. And we did the same thing for ICC in the project plan, because these are major modifications. It's like changing your bone structure. Oh, you don't need 21 ribs, you're going to do with 18. It's going to affect everything in the body. I made that up. I have no idea how many ribs I have. Change requests are typically done with a template, as we mentioned before. They could also be done orally. They could be done directly or indirectly, internally or externally initiated. They could be legally mandated, and this is a big one for a complicated project. For example, OPG, working in the nuclear industry, All of a sudden, there could be a change in requirements from the government that mandates a change in the scope. Most scope changes are basically the result of an external event, such as a change in government regulation, possibly a change in the marketplace. They could be an error or omission of product requirements that we missed that we have to get back on track again, the same with the project scope. They could be a value-added change. In other words, one of my favorite examples was an example done by the federal government to try and integrate all of the various accounting activities of all of the departments across Ottawa. Now, it turns out there are about 85 different departments of various sorts, so this was a huge modification, because every one of those departments had their own individual accounting system. So they quite rightly thought, well, why don't we have an integrated one? Woo-wee, that was a biggie. It was a 4-year project, and about halfway through the project managers were so frustrated, yes, that I said plural, that they said, we have to freeze requirements regardless, or we'll never get this project done. Now, the world at that point, up to, this was 1988 and 1990, were using what we call glass TTYs. These were terminals attached to a mainframe, and all you got was a single green line of text, and no windows, nothing like that. Windows itself, Windows 3.1 and Windows NT, were just becoming available, giving you a reasonable Windows environment. Well, because they froze requirements, that meant they couldn't take the error or omission product requirements. Here's an external change in the technical environment that had a huge impact on the project. So they froze it to glass TTYs. All 85 departments all deployed Windows on their own and started developing their applications. And then along came these guys and said, oh, we want you to use our new unified accounting system. And by the way, we won't be using Windows. Only one of the 85 departments accepted the project. It was a massive failure because here was a value-added change that should have been done. It can also be risk initiated. It can also be initiated, I didn't put it on the slide here, through a corrective mechanism to get the project back on budget and back on schedule. We can throw out some of the changes to actually speed the project up. Our tools and techniques, performance measurement, we need to measure the effects of the changes on the budget and on the time. And typically changes normally cost more money and take longer if they're scope changes. On the other hand, if we're trying to get back on track and we descope, then we might have negative costs and negative time. If we do these changes and accept the changes, we have to change the project management plan and a lot of the project documents. Remember von Moltke's very famous quote in the 19th century. He was a German military historian. He said, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. That's worth writing down, people. Now, the outputs from control scope are basically things we change, work performance information, anything to bring the future work back into line with the original plan, change requests that we've agreed to, well, even ones we haven't agreed to and refused, project management plan update, the adjusted project documents, and finally the lessons learned. These have to be added to the OPA. Why did we miss this? How can we be sure that in future we don't miss this again?